Actually, my lawyer wanted what the evidence was and what were the case files and how the confessions were attained, the basic things that any lawyer would have the right to have in order to defend his client. And he was denied access to all of that information. Not a single piece of the case file was delivered for my attorneys.
Hello, this is Stanley Heller doing a voiceover for The Struggle. Tomorrow, Saturday, November 21st, is the Gandhi Peace Award. An awesome program is on tap on Zoom. It starts at 1 p.m. Eastern, so people in Turkey and Idlib and Europe can see it at a decent hour. There'll be artworks, singing by Dylan Connor and Wisfi Masarani, introductions by Linda Sarsour and Orlando van Einsiedel, and of course the presentations and acceptance speeches. We'll even have an Arabic translation in the chat. It's a webinar. No passwords, no waiting room. Just register at pepeace.org and honor these fine people. The whole rest of the program will be a continuation of the story of the persecution of Ubai Aboudi, the Palestinian-American put in administrative detention and then on trial by the Israeli apartheid state. His interviewer, MIT professor Haynes Miller, asks him about his trial.
I got a feeling that because there was so much pressure and so much awareness about my case, they couldn't, and me being a dual citizen, they couldn't keep me with dual citizenship, Palestinian and American. They couldn't keep me for long under administrative detention. I got a feeling that they might try to go another way and try to frame me up for some charges. In the end, they put some pressure on some people that were under torture and got some, all of that they could get from them was that a membership in illegal organization. And this kinds of charges, actually my lawyer wanted what the evidence was and what were the case files and how the confessions were attained, the basic things that any lawyer would have the right to have in order to defend his client. And he was denied access to all of that information. Not a single piece of the case file was delivered for my attorneys.
Again, are there better examples of justice being done in these military courts? Is this a common?
Well, just this is a mass arrest. This is a mass arrest system. This is a system that's meant to keep the Palestinian people under subjugation. Since 1967, there has been over 1,100,000 arrests, according to the Red Cross, of Palestinians in the West Bank and Gaza Strip. And if you take that calculation, that today there are about 5 million Palestinians in the West Bank and Gaza Strip altogether. So when you're talking about the male population aged 15 to and above, you're talking about almost 1 in every 2 Palestinian has experienced arrest by those military courts in one form or the other. Those cases of the courts, there's no justice. 99.7% to 0.76% is the conviction rate of these courts to Palestinians. These courts do not recognize IHL, do not recognize the Geneva Conventions, do not recognize basic even procedures of fair and due process in being trialed. For example, one of the things that these courts rely on is that the burden of proof is not upon the state. The burden of denial is upon you as a person that's being accused. So they can arrest you, come up with charges for you, and you have the burden of denying all of the charges, of proving that those charges are not correct. Not the state that has a burden, like in any democracy in the world, of proving that the charges that they put up, against you are correct. These courts practice a wide range of abuses to human rights, especially Palestinian human rights. And actually, in my incarceration, my imprisonment, I read the autobiographies of Nelson Mandela, Huey P. Newton from the Black Panthers, and Malcolm X, and they all talked about the court systems that they faced, because they were all imprisoned, trialed, etc. And I felt a deep connection with the way that they describe it. It's like you're sentenced even beforehand. Even in my sentencing, when in the end, you have to reach a deal to be able to get released as soon as possible. So in my sentencing, when the agreement to the deal was reached, because my lawyers were denied access to materials, and my lawyers also told me that the shortest way to getting out of prison is reaching this kind of deal. And I had in mind the case of Muhammad Halabi. Muhammad Halabi, he's a World Vision employee. He has now one of the longest trials, about going on for around almost 5 years. Muhammad Halabi, they have no proof on him that the charges that they made, but they are not releasing him up until even today. And you can, and I think we can share the link to his case file also. So I took my lawyer's advice and went to that deal, because we were denied the ability to do a proper defense. And when the prosecution said 1 year and 1 week, I remember clearly the judge coming and saying, "Why the week?" The judge. And then she sentenced me for 1 year and 1 week. So it's a facade. The Israeli military intelligence is, has all the decisions, and they are just a puppet case show for them.
So you were then being held in Ofer prison, which was built in 1968 near Ramallah on West Bank territory, not in Israel. Yeah. While you were there, can you discuss some of your experience there in Ofer prison? What were the dangers? What was the experience?
Well, it's twofold. You feel a sense of camaraderie, a sense of that Palestinian prisoners stick up to each other, try to help each other, and you feel that there's an oppressive system also that's targeting you as an individual and as a human being, that's trying to dehumanize you. Everything from needles that you need to fix your clothes, because they do not allow us to enter clothes that much. They say theoretically every 60 days you are allowed to enter some clothes for you as a prisoner. But every 60 days, my wife, when she would come to try to enter clothes for me, you would either see clothes being returned. You would either find that those clothes they did not enter everything, or you would see sometimes for the slightest reason your family would be denied visitation. One of the main problems, for example, when getting inside the prison also was the availability of clothes, of pillows, of basic stuff that you do not think that you will be missing, because you do not have the money or the means to buying it from the cantina, and you are not also always are constantly allowed to enter it from outside. The other main thing was also, for example, the quality of the food. It was very bad. The quantity also is very bad. a system of oppression. You will be fined, beaten, sprayed with pepper gas for any slightest whim of the Israeli prison guards. Also, if you tried, for example, to pursue legal affairs against them, for example, raise a complaint, etc., you will know it will go nowhere because they are complicit in violating our basic human rights. For example, in the case of Assayah, who was a Palestinian prisoner that died of cancer in Israeli prisons and was denied treatment. Basic health treatment is a human right, and you cannot deny that for anyone. We had an objection, and we actually also returned the main form of objection for us is the ethical objection of not eating. We abstain from eating. But when we abstain from eating, they punish us. They put on us fines. They subjugate us to humiliating searches, body searches, etc. They destroy they confiscate and destroy our belongings, family pictures. We were denied visitations also because of returning the food. And those kinds of protests are, what do you call it? You are gravely punished for those kinds of protests. But on the other hand, if we do not do those kinds of protests, we will never ever get any rights in Israeli prison. One of the main issues that we faced in Israeli prisons is also the treatment of young prisoners, of child prisoners. Those are prisoners under the age of 18. Some are even 12 years old, who were treated with, I would say, the worst cases of human rights violations. You felt also an ethical responsibility towards those kids. On the other hand, we had the forms of trying to also be productive and effective inside the prison. We had, although education is prohibited by Israeli practices, but we had education, we had books. We actually also, educational books are also forbidden, but they do not read all of the books that are coming in. So we get sometimes some kinds of educational and philosophical books. For example, the GRE, a graduate level exam, because I thought that I might have it in my future to do a PhD. I still have a master's and I want to do my PhD in the future. And so my wife tried to get me a book for the GRE. Once it entered, the second time it was rejected of entry. So the first time they did not notice that it was educational. The second time they noticed. Other things are you try also to have to talk with the people, to have educational sessions on life affairs. For example, one of the proudest things that I did was we held an educational session on CEDAW, the Treaty of Eliminating All Forms of Discrimination and Violence Against Women, because there's a rhetoric about that. And we have the text, and of course, we at Bisan are pro-CEDAW. I myself am with CEDAW agreement. So we had actually, I did actually a seminar, a small seminar for the prisoners on the importance of this agreement, on why should we Palestinians push forward for its signing and being part of it.
Mm-hmm. Well, we'll talk about education in prison. I wanted to mention the name of Maher al-Akras, who is now in his 105th day of a hunger strike. And I believe he started as a prisoner in Ofer prison.
Yeah.
We wish him very well. It's very terrible.
Well, actually, Maher just succeeded. He got his demands of ending administrative detention against him. He's supposed to be released before the end of this month, I think on the 26th.
Okay, so good news comes out right here in this webinar. So one of the people that you met, I think in Ofer prison, was Ubai Aboudi, and I'd like to hear your description of your interaction with him. But let me just introduce Ubai Aboudi to this audience. He was arrested several months ago. I don't have the date in front of me here. And I think we have a few slides to show the audience who Ubai is. Ubai Aboudi is a professor of theoretical space and plasma physics at Al-Quds University. He's 58 years old. We heard in an earlier webinar, S4P webinar, we heard from his daughter, Duha, one of his daughters, who's a medical school student at Al-Quds, describing who he was and his arrest. He has a physics PhD from Utah State University. His main field of study is the Earth's ionosphere. So the ionosphere is a region of ionized particles above the stratosphere, that is 80 to 1,000 kilometers up. It's the region that mediates the interaction between the air that we breathe and outer space. Here we go. This is an image of Ubai in his office and a statement from Al-Quds. He's author of 42 scientific journal articles. And I see he was arrested on July 16th. He was in fact scheduled to be released by court order today on November 8th. And we were looking forward to celebrating his release also in this webinar. But just 4 days ago, he was instead placed on administrative detention for a period of 4 months, and that can be extended. So instead of celebrating, we are now praying for his release and working towards his early release. So interesting, here's a statement from Scientists for Palestine. And he wrote, Ubai himself wrote a letter from prison, which I'd like to read if we have it up here. Here's Duha and his family. This is, Eric, do we have this slide with, yeah, here's part, just a fragment of the letter from Ubai that he wrote in prison. I know justice will never be served as long as Palestinians remain under occupation, but I take courage and inspiration from the words of Desmond Tutu, who said, in a situation of injustice, if you remain neutral, then you have chosen the side of the oppressor. Inspiration for us all. So he is now still remains in prison in administrative detention, and Scientists for Palestine and other organizations are working hard to protect him and try to secure his early release. So we hope for a good outcome. What was your interaction with him, with Ubai, like in Ofer prison, Ubai?
Well, actually, I didn't know Ubai from outside. I got introduced to him inside Ofer prison. When we started talking, I recognized his name, and then he recognized me also from Bisan. So we had an interaction. We spent actually many hours talking to each other, discussing different topics, and even giving knowledge to each other on our specific areas of specialty. Ahmed is a positive person. He's really ethical. He tries to be of service to everyone. He tries to help the people, educate them. Ahmed is also, I would say, he's really humble. Even some prisoners who had a very low academic attainment due to their circumstances in life, he was willing even to help them with what he can. And when you're talking about a professor in astrophysics coming to help someone who hasn't even graduated high school, he had no problems even with those. We agreed. We actually did a couple of educational things together in prison. Me focusing on socioeconomic rights, on what's happening in Palestine, the abuses to our rights of emancipation through Israeli measures, control over our economy, control over our natural resources, violations of international law in that aspect, the role also of international cooperations, and sometimes also, let me say, the complicity of some states, some foreign states also in Israeli crimes and what's happening also for us. Ahmad focused a lot about physics. He actually also gave courses in mathematics inside the prison. We actually also had a collaboration of helping a student finish his master's degree in Ofer. He had done most of the coursework and had 1 or 2 courses left. One of them was in economics, and I helped him with that to finish this course. And of course, Ahmad, as a professor, also had a part in supervising the work and making sure that it's academic and up to the standards. Ahmad, we also tried to get some books from the outside to help us maybe also do some teaching inside the prison. I would say that the works, for example, of Ilan Pepe on the ethnic cleansing of Palestine were instrumental in that, giving people giving people the theoretical framework of analyzing what's happening to Palestine and the Palestinians. And for me also, I benefited a lot from Ahmad. I can remember for us sitting in a corner of the courtyard for a couple of hours, and he's explaining to me the Monte Carlo method of statistics. And both of us discussing can it have implications in economics, and it has implications, but we are thinking of using it for minimum wage analysis, effects, etc. So from the one side, it's imprisonment. On the other side, it's resistance through education.
Exactly. So education may be forbidden in Israeli prisons, but they can't stop it from happening.
No, they can't.
We've all been suffering from COVID-19, from this pandemic. What were the effects of that in prison?
Well, actually, when we first heard of the virus, it was in March, prisoners, we had a feeling of uncertainty, we had a feeling of fear. The Israeli prison services in the first few months did zero precautionary measures. They didn't provide us with masks. They didn't provide us with sanitizers. Even some basic foods that were that could help boost the immune system, like garlic, lemons, etc., were suddenly missing from prison and were not provided for us prisoners. Of course, for my part, I have allergies, and I was a bit worried for my part of getting the COVID, because I had allergies in my lungs, and usually I'm very susceptible to flu and such diseases. The general prison population has many prisoners with that are elderly, that are with risk category. So what happened is that we prisoners started actually returning our food to the administration and going on hunger strikes for short days in order to pressure them in taking action, doing the tests, doing the providing us with masks, social distancing. Social distancing, when we say in prison, we want the prison guards to remain their distance from us prisoners. And that didn't happen. The first case that we heard of a prisoner from Ofer was infected with COVID-19 was from a released prisoner. The Israeli prison administration refused to admit that he had COVID, but the PA, upon his release, did a COVID test for him, and they confirmed that he was infected in COVID-19. Prisoners for example, Ofar, they talked about at certain points of having around 20 cases of prisoners being infected with COVID-19. And when you're talking about 20 prisoners infected, just to give you a context for that, every 8 prisoners live in a single room. That's 3 meters by 12 meters long. And the prison sections are very tightly close together. So you're talking anywhere between 70 and 160 prisoners in each section, according to the size of the section. So if one prisoner gets infected, he will most definitely infect his room, and through the prison yard, he will infect the other prisoners in the section. And the only source of infection for prisoners was the prison guards. And the prison guards actually, we would hear later on that this prison guard is away. He was, for example, because you're staying in prison, you know which prison guard comes on which day. And you would find that for several weeks, there was these prison guards that were absent, and you would find out that they have COVID-19. And some of them, the day before, were on duty inside of prison, had their shifts, had their work inside of prison.
That's our program for today. See you next week at this time. Stay safe, but stay active. This is Stanley Heller for The Struggle.